Hey there, and welcome to Broadband Deployment News. So Comcast has deployed something like a milestone in their DOCSIS 4.0 deployment for their cable plant. And the Frontier CEO says that he's not that concerned about 4.0. Be right back. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Broadband Deployment News. So I saw a couple of stories here that I wanted to cover. So you see here, that's the second one. Let me get here to the first one on Comcast. So you see here, Comcast completes DOCSIS 4.0 puzzle with amplifier tests. So DOCSIS 4.0, and you'll see also mentioned in here 10G. 10G is kind of the vision, the initiative that Cable Labs came up with to kind of counter. Well, at the time, I thought it was like a counter to 5G, because 5G was 5th generation wireless, whereas 10G was supposed to be 10 gigabit per second symmetrical. So it's kind of the vision, and DOCSIS 4.0 is kind of taking that vision and putting it down on paper and the specifications that are supposed to make that happen. So you'll see both those things referenced at times. So you see here, I'm just going to read through this. So Comcast reached, and this was SCTE Cable Tech Expo going on in Philadelphia this week. Comcast reached what one operator executive called a critical milestone on its road to rolling out DOCSIS 4.0 next year, touting the successful test of a 10G capable full duplex or FDX amplifier. So this is kind of interesting because full duplex is something that's your symmetrical kind of service that cable has always struggled with providing, because generally you've got a lot more, they've been able to provide a lot more bandwidth on the downstream than the upstream, which really is where most of the bandwidth is going still today. Although it's increased quite a bit on the upstream, it's still mostly downstream that people are consuming. And that's because people are mostly consuming as opposed to producing. Right now I'm producing a stream, but normally people are watching streams, doing other kinds of things. But certainly the demand for upstream has gone up. It's just not really a symmetrical demand yet, but the fiber industry is touting the ease at which they can do symmetrical service on fiber. So DOCSIS folks have been trying to keep up with that. Comcast, being really the biggest MSO around in this country, has been going down this path of full duplex. With network and modem trials already under its belt, the amplifier news this week fills in the final puzzle piece Comcast needed to make DOCSIS 4.0 reality. The test used an amplifier based on Broadcom reference design and delivered speeds of 6 gig down and 4 gigs up in a node +6 amplifier cascade. So this is interesting because I had always heard that in order to do full duplex, you need to be node +0, which means you needed to be going from your head end or your hub or whatever it is all the way out fiber to the node, and then from there basically no more amplifiers out to the end user. So then it switches to coax, and you're basically delivering coax to the end user, but no amplifiers in between. But and that was when I think in the intelligence that has to do this full duplex was supposed to be housed in the node. And full duplex, what that does is it takes normally on a cable plant, you've got the spectrum that you're using, and you allocate a certain chunk of that a big chunk of that for downstream, and then a smaller chunk of that for upstream. And you're using, it's like a 2-lane highway basically. You're using 1 lane for downstream, 1 lane for upstream. Full duplex is like a 1-lane highway where you got cars going in both directions, but there's technology that helps them avoid collisions so that you can have cars going down the same lanes and not hitting each other basically, or packets, right? So, but what they're saying here is they've got these full duplex amplifiers that they're testing now. So you can have an amplifier in here, and that amplifier, with those amplifiers in there and them being full duplex capable, then you can do full duplex with these amplifiers. And this is important because one of the big expenses for cable operators to do full duplex is that they would have to get to, or thought we had to get to, this node +0 infrastructure, where you're taking out amplifiers, having to put in more fiber. You're almost going fiber all the way to the end user, and then it's like, well, should we just go all the way to the end user? You still got expense for that last mile of getting that to fiber. So this, as it says here, Elad Nafshi, EVP and Chief Network Officer at Comcast Cable, told Fierce the latter detail is important because it means the technology can easily slot into the vast majority of Comcast's existing network. They can do node +6. Most of their network is probably that, node +6 or even better maybe, where they've got fewer amplifiers because they've been making those upgrades over time as they've been getting fiber deeper into the plant. Those who've been closely tracking the industry DOCSIS 4.0 progress might remember Charter Communications in April delivered speeds of more than 8 gig down in a node plus 4 amplifier trial. However, Nafshi noted that that demonstration focused on the extended spectrum DOCSIS version, or extended spectrum ESD version of DOCSIS 4.0, which requires less complicated amplifiers than FDX does. In other words, your traditional amplifiers. That's because FDX involves the simultaneous transmission of data upstream and downstream using the same spectrum, again, that one-lane road, whereas ESD uses separate chunks of spectrum for the upstream and the downstream flows. So what ESD does is it uses that same two-lane highway, but it expands the lanes, makes them bigger. So DOCSIS, the cable has always worked having these 2 lanes, but it just expands or gives you more bandwidth so that you can increase speeds that way. So it's not going to really get you a full duplex, and at least not at the kind of speeds we're talking about here. Nafshi said the amplifier Comcast used incorporated complicated noise cancellation technology not included in the ESD amplifiers. Interesting. Yeah, so that would be that, again, that's taking that noise cancellation, that's taking that same, I think that same concept that would have resided in the node and putting in the amplifier so you can, again, avoid these packet collisions. They call it noise cancellation, but basically timing everything so that stuff can go down the same path. This is a major technical achievement to be able to do that, and certainly over a 6 amplifier cascade and still deliver those speeds. We're just getting started. We fully expect those speeds to get faster as we get more time and better automation across the configuration of these amplifiers. I said it used a pre-production amplifier for its test and will spend the rest of the year and early next year hardening the technology for field deployments. So that process includes ensuring the amplifier can perform in a wide range of different physical environments, such as sub-zero weather in the Midwest and 100+ degree temperatures in Arizona. It also includes software refinements to ensure the amplifier can effectively self-configure. So you have to look at Comcast as being not in a really vulnerable position because of their technology. So they already can deliver very fast speeds. So if somebody's got Comcast today, generally they're going to get very fast download speeds and certainly reasonable upload speeds to be doing anything that they want to do on their service. So this is really more future-oriented, where Comcast is looking at how can we keep the investment that we have in our HFC plant as long as we possibly can and still be able to match in a lot of ways what fiber can offer as far as increasing the amount of speed and getting a symmetrical service. So again, their threat is not so much from the speeds that they're offering in areas, even if a fiber competitor came in, because people need a reason to switch. And if you have a fiber operator come in and you've got Comcast come in, if they're both delivering very fast speeds and they both are delivering good customer service, then somebody's probably not going to switch. So if somebody likes the service they're getting from Comcast, they don't want to have to deal with switching. What's going to make people switch is bad service and high prices and things like maybe long-term commitments, which is sometimes a reason that people switch, because the Comcast, your Comcast, you come to the end of your term, whether it's a 1-year term or 2-year term, whatever, and then suddenly your price goes up and you got to call and say, hey, my price went up, and then hopefully they'll lower it back down. Maybe they don't lower as much. Whereas if you're on month to month and you're happy, then you're probably not going to switch. So cable operators and any others that are doing these long-term commitments need to keep this in mind, that the best thing you can do as any kind of a company, as a business, is keep your customers happy, and then they won't have a reason to leave. The only other thing would be price, like I say. I mean, if a competitor come in and seriously undercut the price, then Comcast or whoever that business is needs to decide, well, do we match them? Can we match them? Fiber is going to be less expensive than a DOCSIS plan on maintaining, so there are some advantages there. Fixed wireless, 5G kinds of service, while not as fast as the speeds we're talking about here, is going to be less expensive, although the spectrum gets a little bit challenging. So anyway, there are things to be said about competition and whether Comcast is vulnerable, and the biggest vulnerability for them is the big mega MSO, cable operator, cable guy kind of thing, where people are not happy with their cable operator because it's kind of this big faceless conglomerate that doesn't care about them, nickels and dimes them, and then also, like I say, you get involved in these long-term commitments that you have to renegotiate over and over again. Let's see. The FDX amplifier is the last piece of the DOCSIS 4.0 puzzle for Comcast. In October 2021, the operator demonstrated an end-to-end DOCSIS 4.0 link, which handled traffic from its virtual cable modem termination system, or VCMTS, over a node into a modified DOCSIS 3.1 modem operating in the FDX or full duplex band. So virtual CMTS, this is where we're virtualizing the equipment. I talked about this recently with distributed access architecture and flexible MAC architecture, where cable operators are separating the components of the CMTS with remote PHY devices or even remote MAC-PHY devices, like a little virtual or a little small CMTS out in the field. Or they're doing these virtual CMTS things even where it's just equipment. It's not like it's not a CMTS, but it's servers that are running CMTS kind of applications. So that's what they're talking about there. It followed it up with a trial of a prototype DOCSIS 4.0 modem for customer CPE in January. Comcast previously said it planned to begin testing FDX amplifiers in July 2022 and was targeting a node +6 architecture. So there you go. When it finally comes to time to roll out DOCSIS 4.0, Nafshi said that it will be done via software upgrade to its VCMTS. So again, that's an advantage of having these virtual CMTS, is that it's basically software running on a server. That module swaps on its, module swaps. So in addition to that upgrade, module swaps on its digital nodes, more than 50,000 of which have already been deployed. So they're a long way there. Electronic swaps of its amplifiers and a CPE upgrade on the customer side. So there is a lot that they have to do, but I'm sure they've looked at the balance sheet here and at the options and said, well, we can do this or we can do fiber. And if they were to do fiber, there's more that they would have to do if they were to do fiber all the way to the customer. What I mean by that is overbuilding their current HFC plant. When they're going into new areas, I think Comcast also is doing, they're doing fiber to the home on their new greenfield deployments. Like if they're going to an area where they don't already provide service, they don't have infrastructure already, they're just going to do fiber to the home on those. But in these areas where they've got existing customers to upgrade that, they're going this route. Comcast EVP and Deputy CFO and Treasurer James Armstrong recently said Comcast is aiming to be in the market with DOCSIS 4.0 by the second half of 2023. So they're in a good position to make that happen, it looks like. And then I saw this story about Frontier. This is not necessarily related to the Comcast announcement. This was prior to that. So Frontier CEO doesn't fear DOCSIS 4.0 or fixed wireless threats. This is in light reading here, you see. DOCSIS 4.0 and fixed wireless are no match for speeds and performance of fiber to the premises, FTTP networks. And that's that, according to Frontier Communications CEO Nick Jeffery. And I think he's got a point there. Fiber fundamentally is a better product than cable. And I think it would be hard to find a cable operator, even Comcast, that would say, hey, no, that's not true. So, because again, what Comcast is trying to do is make the most out of their investment, this huge investment they already have in this HFC architecture. But again, where they're plowing new ground, they're putting in fiber. At some point, cable will face a very difficult choice, either upgrading to DOCSIS 4.0, which is a usually capital-intensive program that will take many years to roll out on scale. And even when it does, the end product is still worse than fiber is today. Some people would say it's not necessarily worse, but I think, again, he's got a point. Fiber is the way to go for the future. Of course, major U.S. cable operators, except for Altus USA, would firmly disagree with that assessment and point out that DOCSIS 4.0 is poised to deliver multi-gig symmetrical speeds, low latency capabilities, and enhanced security, and do so at a much lower cost than it would take to go big on the fiber to the premises. And again, that's talking about overbuilding. So yes, DOCSIS 4.0, as you can see with what Comcast is doing, they're going to get very high speeds. Eventually, I guess they'll be able to do symmetrical speeds, but again, when will symmetrical really be needed? I think reliability-wise, fiber is the way to go. So this is really more about the expense. To go big, fiber to the premise would be ripping out stuff you have and putting in fiber. That's a bigger expense than doing upgrades to your HFC plant in most cases. Now it says save for Altus. So Altus USA has made the decision, you know what, we're going to go fiber. So they are actually overbuilding their HFC infrastructure with fiber and then converting customers over. They're not forcing people over at this point. They're basically operating two plants, fiber and HFC, and then they're giving people the option, I believe, to switch over to fiber. DOCSIS 4 upgrades will require operators to touch the plant, of course, making the move much more expensive and complex than it was to upgrade to DOCSIS 3.1. Actually, DOCSIS 3.1 was pretty complicated. But those upgrades probably won't take as long to complete as Jeffrey is trying to let on, as you can see here by Comcast. As by way of example, Comcast, the largest U.S. operator, will start to launch symmetrical multi-gig speeds in 2023, initially with mid-split upstream upgrade, and make them available to more than 50 million homes and businesses before the end of 2025. But as we just read, they've got grander plans than that with this full duplex and this amplifier that they've just completed this testing on. But one can't blame Jeffrey for making big competitive claims. After all, his company is bidding the farm on fiber to the premise upgrades and build-outs. Frontier's current plan is to build fiber to at least 10 million locations by 2025. Plus, it's an opportunity time for Jeffrey to pile on. Frontier is having success growing its fiber subscriber base, while cable is struggling for ways to re-accelerate broadband subscriber growth, following a quarter in which some top operators saw broadband subs growth go negative. Well, yeah, of course he's having success with his fiber ads because they're overbuilding their own copper plants. So they've got DSL areas out there that they're overbuilding, slow DSL areas, and they're putting fiber in. So yeah, you're going to have success with that. And they're not in a position like Comcast is, where they're already providing good, fast service, good, fast broadband. They've got areas that are DSL that are slow. So they have to overbuild those with fiber. They have to make that investment to do that. And yeah, they're going to have good success with that. And Jeffrey allows that cable might have to switch gears to keep up. The other route that cable may well go, and some have, is to change horses completely and start building fiber networks. Again, very capital intensive, as Altus is doing. And that is capital intensive. Altus has just made the decision, you know what, we're going to either spend money upgrading our HFC plant, or we're going to upgrade to fiber. And we're eventually everybody's going to upgrade to fiber. It's just a question of, do you do it now, or do you spend the money on upgrading your cable plant and do fiber later in your brownfield areas? Starting now in the midst of supply chain constraints, I wouldn't like to be doing that myself. That's true, yeah. It's going to be hard. With everybody that's building fiber, it's going to be hard for cable operators to be part of that group that are going to be trying to overbuild plant with fiber. So maybe that's one reason Comcast is doing what it's doing. Fixed wireless access will nibble at the copper base, but not a long-term threat, according to Jeffries. As for fixed wireless access, Jeffrey said Frontier is keeping tabs, but doesn't see it as much of a long-term threat. We're all watching it like a hawk, he said, and they should be. While Frontier has seen copper churn pick up slightly, as fiber upgrades continue, the company attributes that primarily to the recent cleaning up of non-paid subscribers. I think it's inevitable that fixed wireless will begin to nibble at our copper base, probably in more rural areas where fiber hasn't yet turned up, he said. We can't see it in the numbers yet, but it will turn up at some point. So yeah, if T-Mobile hits an area where Frontier is and T-Mobile has 5G service, then they're going to see a lot of people go over to T-Mobile. So just a question of where 5G starts to deploy. T-Mobile's getting more and more spectrum. They're deploying that faster and faster. Same with AT&T and Verizon. But at a high level, he's not a big fan of fixed wireless. Jeffrey said fixed wireless strategies were looked at while he was at Vodafone UK. The company concluded that didn't make economic sense as data usage and the cost to support that usage both climb. That is something I wonder about, because right now T-Mobile is having a lot of success by offering $50 per month plans. So they're coming into areas where there already is good broadband. Like here in Atlanta, I think they are offering the $50 plan where you've got AT&T fiber, you've got Comcast cable service, and they're coming in with a $50 plan. And some people, again, because of the price point, there's no long-term commitment. There's no usage amount, so $50 a month. I think that's a deal that might make people switch. Now, the question is, how long can they do that? And they've actually started to back off, I think, on the usage thing, because they're starting to realize that the more people are using on their network, the spectrum can only handle so much. So in areas where spectrum is kind of congested, they're starting to back off of that. Frontier, Jeffrey pointed out, is seeing average customers chew up 1 terabyte of data per month on average, with the top quarter of the group using 2 terabytes or more. About half of the new fiber subs are taking speeds of 1 gig or more. And I talked about this. I did a broadcast several days ago about a new Open Vault report that talked about the fact that the number of what they called super users and really super users, I forget what the categories were, but they were like 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte kinds of users have grown. So, apparently Frontier's seeing that same thing. He allowed that fixed wireless access is useful for some segments on the market, but expects those customers to eventually flip to fiber when the opportunity arises. At the end of the day, we're really comparing a Ferrari to a horse, Jeffrey said. So he's kind of exaggerating the difference in speeds, I think, if you got DOCSIS 4.0, or maybe he's talking about fixed wireless here. So no need yet for the mobile bundle. He's talking about that. Just there goes into, the opportunity to bundle mobile with your broadband service. So, again, he's coming at it from a different perspective. A telephone company that had DSL as their broadband method and is now upgrading to fiber as quickly as they can in those areas, versus a cable operator that is, again, already providing high-speed service. It's just that they're kind of locked in their HFC infrastructure and doing what they can to extend the life of that. So kind of two different perspectives there. But certainly DOCSIS 4.0 for Comcast is going to be a big thing. And then for somebody like Charter, using the extended spectrum DOCSIS portion of that, that's going to help them. And that was basically, by the way, with DOCSIS, there was DOCSIS 3.1, and then they were talking about the next revision of DOCSIS, which became DOCSIS 4.0. But prior to that, there were kind of two paths people were going down. There was full duplex, and there was extended spectrum DOCSIS. And those were kind of two separate paths. And when then DOCSIS 4.0 came out, as Cable Labs said, we're putting both of those in the 4.0 spec, so an operator can choose to go either way. And that's what we're seeing as operators are doing both of those things. So, Conway Fan 98, I wonder where Charter is on upgrading to DOCSIS 4. I've heard their FTTH speeds are the same as DOCSIS 3. Their upload speed reaching a maximum of 35 megabits per second and 10 megabits per second, at the slowest. So, so this is Charter. Their fiber speeds are the same as DOCSIS 3. That's really surprising. I don't know why that would be the case, because generally when you put in fiber, there's not a big technology leap to be able to go, do fast speeds over fiber. Basically, it's, the fiber, the medium is already there, and then it's to change out of lasers and how the light is shot down the glass, those kinds of things are basically what are going to increase the speeds. Whereas on DOCSIS, they're trying to squeeze more and more. Again, same thing. You've got coax. You're trying to limit the amount of coax if possible to try to increase speeds, and then do some of these things like full duplex that are going to help increase the speed, and then also providing more spectrum for the RF signal to go down, up and down, is to be able to do that. So yeah, I don't know. Charter, like I say, they are on the DOCSIS side. They are the ones that are doing the extended spectrum DOCSIS, so they're trying to expand their spectrum there, and all of this stuff's going to take some time. But that's not great speeds for a cable operator, or certainly if it's fiber. But if you're talking about cable, 35 by 10, that's not a good speed, unless that's like your really low-cost plan. And that's not too bad for a low-cost plan for people that don't need to use it much. But if you want to do streaming, those kinds of things, most people are going to be wanting to upgrade well past that. So anyway, DOCSIS 4.0, it's coming. Fiber, it's here. The question is, for these cable operators, what kind of threat do they see from fiber operators that could maybe overbuild in their area, or that are in their area? Like Comcast is competing with AT&T in lots of areas, like here in the Atlanta area. And then, so what do they do about that? And then there's this whole 5G thing of, again, you got to provide good service if you want to be able to keep your customers. You are not going to keep them if you are ignoring them. You're not going to keep them if you make it hard to do business. You need to have good technical support. Lots of things that you need to be able to do. So anyway, thanks for joining me. If we can help in any way, make sure that you check us out. For example, here's a couple of ways we can help just based on what we're talking about today. We have a proactive network maintenance application that cable operators can use to improve the performance of their HFC plant. So it actually can help them reduce costs, and it can help them increase the speeds, do lots of things, because you're proactively finding issues in the cable plant, RF issues in the cable plant that reduce speeds, that increase your maintenance costs, because what we try to do is help somebody be able to schedule maintenance and fix something before it impacts customers, rather than waiting for a customer to call and then driving around in a truck to figure out where the problem is. We have tools that can help them find those problems, be able to fix them in advance, be able to do, for example, a virtual sweep of their plant without having to go out in the field twice a year and do sweeps. There's lots of things we can do to help them decrease the cost of that. So that's just one of the things that we can do, all kinds of things that we can do to help out with people that are trying to provide good service on a fiber plant or even on a DOCSIS plant. We have fiber tools as well, fiber diagnostics that can help fiber operators as well. Thanks for joining me. If you do want to contact us, you see our contact info there. Otherwise, please subscribe and click the little bell to be notified when I'm live. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. Appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.